Good afternoon. Welcome to the Lisbon Live. My name is Gudmundur Jørgen. I'm the founding principal of the Lisbon International School here in the beautiful city of Lisbon, Portugal. We have our Lisbon Live session today. The purpose of our Lisbon Live sessions is to provide you with the opportunity to learn more about our school. What makes our school special? How do we approach education in terms of the curriculum and the different structures and the different opportunities that we offer to our children that join our school? Today's session, I'm thrilled to welcome my colleague, Alexandra, or Ali Cowley, to join me here on the screen. So there we go. Magic.
Hi.
Ali, good to see you.
Same. Good to see you too.
Great to have you here with us here in Lisbon. Our founding team is coming together from various parts of the world. Ali, you've just joined us from China.
Yes, I have. I've spent the last 3 years in China in a city called Hangzhou, which is about an hour and a half outside of Shanghai, and I worked at an international school there.
And you joined us as our special educational needs teacher or specialist with the team, and we're thrilled to have you with us, and can't wait to work alongside you, Ali, in supporting our children at the Lisboan. Tell us about your journey, Ali. So China, what was it like being in China, and where did you come from to go to China, etc.?
I think basically probably best to start in terms of my own educational journey, which is basically I struggled a lot in my early years in education as a child, and I found it very difficult to fit in. And I think that's what pointed me into the direction that I eventually ended up in, even though that wasn't primarily where I wanted to go when I started. I did an undergraduate degree in psychology and social anthropology, and from there then did a diploma in pre-primary teaching in Montessori, all the time working and volunteering in children's homes and sort of in situations or settings where there were children who were exposed to severe neglect or abuse and were in need of extra support. And from there, basically, it sort of evolved much more towards going into the direction of working with children, supporting them with schoolwork and helping them with learning of life skills and, peer relationships, social skills, emotional skills, those sort of areas, eventually leading to me studying for a postgraduate in special needs education, and from there then really becoming very sort of focused on special needs education.
But it strikes me, when you talk about struggling at school, I think it's probably fair to say that the majority of us, to some degree, struggled at school. School sometimes can be really hard, and fitting in can be hard in a school environment. And I recall some of the school experience I had of finding that challenging at times, and not only in terms of socially, but also in terms of the content that you were tackling, getting to grips with, and making sure that you were learning effectively, and sometimes feeling very, very confused. So it's wonderful to have you with us, Ali, and it's clear that from your background and your education, your extensive experience, that of course we all want the best for every single one of our children, our own children, and of course the children that come and join us at the Lisboan. And I think there are many things as well that link us together in some ways, Ali. Of course, we work for the Lisboan. My background is in archaeology, and of course very much related to the field of anthropology. And we also have a United World College link, don't we? I used to work for a school. So the United World Colleges are a group of schools across the world, one of which is in Norway. And I had the great pleasure of working at UWC. And you have some UWC background too, don't you, Ali?
Yeah, I attended the UWC in Swaziland, Waterford Kamhlaba, initially for a year and a half, doing my O levels there. And then I received a scholarship as the Namibian representative to the UWC in Hong Kong, which I then did my international baccalaureate for 2 years in Hong Kong
Amazing.
as a scholarship student.
I
So
can
yeah,
imagine
I've
that was quite
been,
a difference between Namibia, or from Eswatini, as it's now called, to
yeah,
going to Hong Kong.
I, it was a very big difference. And I think I've been very lucky to have that sort of exposure to two very different colleges and two very different environments in terms of the community that they were based in. But I think for me that especially the IB years were very much the place where I found my voice and found my place, and where I sort of found also probably the connections and the teachers that I have sort of modeled my own career path on, in terms of the type of teacher and the type of educator that I want to be. Because it's really the teachers that I had in those last 2 years made such an amazing difference, and this just the belief and the sort of focus on me as an individual, and that with all of their students, in terms of bringing out the best in every single one of their students, regardless of where they came from and what educational background they had, and supporting us all as individuals, really laid the groundwork in terms of how education was supposed to be, in my view, always, and something that I had not previously experienced prior to attending the UWCs.
And I think inevitably as well, that having had that experience and having lived in so many different countries, Ali, bringing together, bringing that understanding of different cultures and the ways in which we can see the world in such different kinds of ways, but also that we share so much. Of course, regardless of our culture or regardless of where we come from, there are basic fundamentals that we all share together. And of course, the Lisbon community is going to be a very diverse community, not only in terms of our staff, but also in terms of our parents and our children, the students themselves. Now,
Yeah.
talking about the Lisbon, Ali, what drove you to want to join the Lisbon when you were doing your research and thinking about, your next steps? And here you are, just arrived in Lisbon, and here we are just about to start this incredible journey. What stood out to you?
I think the biggest thing is sort of during the interview process, especially, is having spoken to you and having felt that sort of really strong connection and consensus in terms of how we viewed education and what we wanted to have children receive out of education and get out of education. And also, the possibility of building something from the ground up, making it something that you have, a lot of input in, and starting something on the right foot, basically, and not coming into something that's already established and having to change things and find your place within something that has already been set up. Whereas it's a blank slate, which makes it amazing, which means you can, so right from the beginning, go in and put in the strategies and the support mechanisms and form those relationships, freshly and newly. And I think that's so important. Also, the fact that, we're going to start off with a rather small student base, and that allowing us to have the opportunity to grow strongly and to focus on the individual children, and to make sure that there is that feeling of belonging and being part of the community, which is really, really important. And I think that's something that tends to get lost in bigger schools. Whereas in a sort of a smaller school, there is that very strong community feeling and that focus of working as a community together.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that. Um, yeah, the one of the, I think, exciting aspects for us as well is that we are right in the heart of a really dynamic and vibrant community in Alcantara. And it'll be really exciting as well to build relationships out beyond our school campus into the local community as well. A lot of that work has already started, and that's the work that we all together build on. Now, in terms of your specialism, the way in which you've specialized in special educational needs, in some ways, I've always felt that the way in which the title of this role, for special education, is I find it an interesting one, because and I guess I find it a little odd in some ways because I think we all, to some degree, find learning sometimes really difficult and challenging. And so I'm just really, I want to get to the heart of, you've talked about what's sort of driven you to focus in on this area and specialize. And in your practice, in your daily practice, what really gives it meaning for you, Ali?
I think, the sort of the term special education, actually, it's something that in a way bothers me a little bit because it's focusing on the differences, and the differences as a disorder rather than seeing it as just a child being different, and everybody is different. Nobody is the same. And, when it comes to neurodiversity, it is, it's the way that our brains are wired. And within that difference, there is strength. And looking for those strengths and focusing on them and building within that, within the areas where the child has their strengths in, instead of focusing on the weaknesses, and teaching children how to work their way around their weaknesses or the areas that they struggle in. I think that is what's so important. And I think, viewing it from the strengths area rather than looking at it from the sort of the difficulties and the weakness gives everybody involved so much more power over this situation. And, also, these children, very often they come into schools or they've been in schools and they've had difficulties, they've had struggles, and they've been made to feel less than. And it's working working with them as individuals and building up their confidence and making them proud of who they are, which is so important. And once a child has that confidence and that ability to see that, yes, they are different, and yes, certain things are more difficult than for other children, maybe, but there are other areas where they excel in, and focusing on that rather than on the areas that they don't. I think that turns the whole sort of view and perception of so-called special education needs around. And I think that's something that's, for me, is very important, is to change that perception of it being something that is seen as a struggle rather than something that is seen as a strength.
Yeah, that's a very powerful idea. And of course, language, words are so important, aren't they? In terms of how we use them, how we define them. There is such incredible power in language.
It's not that it's problems that need to be fixed or cured. It's just simply variations in how we think and perceive things.
Absolutely. Now, thinking about, so we are about to open our doors, welcoming our student community and parent community. First day of school is on Monday, the 1st of September. How do you plan to support the students when you come and join the team and actually start to engage with our staff, with our children, supporting them with their needs so that they thrive and ultimately gain that confidence?
I think, the way that I always approach children is to build that relationship, to focus on the relationship and build a relationship based on trust and respect, and an understanding of being able to, communicate in a way that the child feels heard. And, taking it from there, basically, I very often, also in previous schools, I didn't like being given children's profiles or portfolios. which already sort of paint a picture and give you an idea of what their needs are. I much rather prefer to, engage with the child, engage with the teachers, the parents, and form that opinion myself and work from there. I think it's very important not to have preconceived ideas. It's good to have a background and to have a basic understanding of where, a child's areas of strengths or weaknesses lie. But I think in terms of, then taking that sort of support further is very much based on that one-to-one relationship that I then form with that child and their family and their teachers.
Yeah. And once you sort of built that trust and built that relationship with the child, and we start to identify children who are finding some areas of our school, some areas of their learning challenging. How do we then go forward and support that child? What does that look like on a sort of lived daily basis?
I think again, it's very sort of individual based. It
Mm.
depends on the child and what the actual needs are. But typically it would be based on sort of interventions, seeing where they need specific interventions, whether it's certain gaps in learning or difficulties like children with dyslexia, for instance, or children with ADHD and have issues in terms of processing or paying attention, and then working on methods with the child in order to um, you know, work on those areas and make them stronger within those areas. And again, it's different for each individual child depending on what their difficulties are. And then making sure that it's sort of done in a very supportive way, of listening to the children, of learning how they learn best, where their strengths lie, and utilizing those strengths and their interests in learning. Because very often if a child is weak in a subject, they don't like that subject. So it's a matter of building up that confidence and encouraging the learnings in terms of what their general interests are. So for instance, if you have a child who finds it difficult to read, looking at, reading things that interest them, finding texts that are relevant to them and incorporating that, the same things with maths. I know I, as a child, struggled tremendously with maths. And even to this day, I sort of get very flustered when someone asks me a mathematical question that you think you should be able to work out really quickly. But it's like just building that confidence and having that constant encouragement and celebrating every single step, no matter how small it is. And, I've seen it again and again. As soon as you have that confidence, as soon as a child feels that they are able to do something and have the confidence to try, they suddenly take off. And areas that used to be really, really difficult become much easier. And also finding strategies around areas which are difficult and how one can sort of maneuver one's way around that and make it easier. There's so many different methods in terms of breaking down tasks and looking at things in a different way rather than just in a written form. If a child has difficulty with writing, maybe using speech to text technology, things like that. So, there's so much available to put that support in place these days. It's just a matter of finding what works for that individual.
Yeah, don't worry, Ali. I'm not going to ask you any mathematical questions. I promise. Um,
Good.
Now, in terms of our staff, we have our teaching team coming together. How do you engage with the staff in terms of then fostering their ability to also be a part of that support network for the children?
I think it's again, it's communication. I think
Mm.
communication is the key of a successful, relationship. Um, it's, being positive, not being critical, giving suggestions, seeing what they're doing well, focusing on those areas, and then giving suggestions of what could work, what couldn't work, and trying things and just being open to the knowledge that some things will work and some things won't work, and just having that, again, the communication. And, not everybody comes with the same background, which is really important to keep in mind. And very often in my career, I've also found that a lot of the teaching staff also has neurodiverse issues. So it's, it's working with everybody's abilities and everybody's strengths together to produce an environment where everybody can thrive in, and that includes the teachers as well as the students and the parents.
Yeah. Now we've talked about, we touched upon this idea about the sort of misconceptions or the way in which people can define special educational needs in a sort of deficit way. You have now this opportunity, as you've talked about, of building the support structures at the Lisboan from the ground up. We have this opportunity together.
Yeah.
So how without going into too much detail, because of course we don't have, we could probably talk about this for many days, I would imagine, because there is so much to talk about. But you have this golden opportunity to lay down this really strong foundation. And what do you think in terms of that foundation itself? What is your ideal in terms of how you would want to build it and how we will build it?
So inclusion is very important to me, that the child has that feeling of belonging and has that feeling that school is a safe space. And that, and then that is only sort of, it's again with open communication, pinpointing when there are issues, early intervention, having the appropriate support structures in place, bringing outside support in as well if needed. For instance, local speech therapists, occupational therapists, people like that. And then having the necessary tools to do assessments and find those, the specific areas of need and working around those, and making sure that every teacher, every classroom is supported as as it is needed. I think, it's very important to have that feeling of inclusion and feeling of belonging within a school and being part of the school for these children, especially if they've had previous experiences where they felt very much like the outsiders. And I think it's sort of making sure that the whole environment is just an environment that where every child has the possibility to thrive, and wherever, whatever the needs of support are, that they are implemented quickly and strongly and with all the players involved that are necessary to support that child.
Now, you've used the word belong quite often already, just in our conversations so far. And that, of course, ties beautifully into one of our principles. One of our guiding principles for the Lisboan is belong. But we also have two others, and they are own and act. And of course, they're all important. And it's for us all together, it's something that we need to reflect upon and build into everything that we do. So they're all important in different kinds of ways. Do you feel that for you, does one of these stand out? Would it be belong, or do you feel that they all have a part?
I think they all sort of interweave and interconnect with each other. But I think the primary one is probably the belonging, because when you feel that you belong somewhere, then your ownership and your wanting to act and give and put back into something, it is much stronger than when you feel you don't belong somewhere. When you have that feeling that this is a safe space, this is somewhere where I can be who I am, this is somewhere where I'm accepted and supported no matter what, it's everything else falls into place from there. And I think that's why the belong is so important.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I feel that in the same way that you do, Ali, these three principles, they summarize so beautifully what underpins a powerful educational experience. And it's just also wonderful that it falls into is a central part of the name of our school, the Lisboan, and of course this beautiful city of Lisboa. Now, talking about partnerships I think also are critically important, whether it be partnerships with the teaching staff, with the children themselves, with families. How do you see that partnership? What does that look like for you, Ali, in your role at the Lisboan, to make sure that we're supporting all of the children as we need to?
having that communication with parents, having that open door policy, being supportive, being understanding, knowing that, taking people's and families' background into consideration. And also, I think specifically from my point of view, I know that very often when parents do get spoken to about their children having specific struggles and there being the possibility of there being, an issue of neurodiversity, that it's sometimes can be very difficult to understand for a parent or accept for a parent. And having that communication and that relationship, and having the empathy and the support and the kindness and giving parents time to understand and to accept, rather than it being sort of from sort of a judgmental space where you sort of, your child has an issue and it needs to be fixed and it needs to be corrected. Very much coming from a point of view, we know your child struggles with this. This is what we are going to do to support. How can we help you? What questions do you have? And taking it from there. I think building those strong connections and for the children also to see that their parents respect the school and support the school, and the school in turn has good relationships with the parents. I think that's very, very important for children to see as well, because at the end of the day, I think, the education system, the school that a child attends, and their family are probably the two strongest, besides their peer relationship, influences in a child's, early life journey, especially.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things you made me think of, in my experience of working in different cultures and different settings, and when children do experience, mental health challenges or challenges around their learning, there can sometimes be a real stigma attached to um, offering that level or that kind of support to children,
Yeah.
through whether it be through special educational needs or whichever other strategy or support mechanism you're identifying. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts, Sally. Have you? I'm sure you probably have experienced similar things in your different roles in different countries you've worked at. How do you? How do we meaningfully tackle that kind of challenge?
I think it's again, it's just taking it slowly, understanding
Mm,
that from a parent's point of view, this is probably not so much a surprise because, they have been parents for a while. They know their children. Very often these children have experienced difficulties, but also very often these difficulties have been passed over to parents as being a problem, rather than the school saying this is something that we can support you in. And it's taking that sort of attitude of we are here to help, we are here to support, this is what we can do. And then also just educating parents, giving them the information, um, and never making them feel that it is their fault or think that it is their fault, and that it is something that they have no control over. I think, it's very important for them to not feel that guilt or that embarrassment, which very often comes with sort of a cultural background as well. And just having that sort of that support network, being available, being there with, suggestions and just someone to talk to very often. And then also really focusing on their child's strengths and every little step forward that their child makes and making that into a really big thing, letting parents know how the child is doing, how the child is progressing, and always making sure that the parent understands that the child's best interest is what is at everybody's heart, in everybody's heart, and that is what the focus is. And then it's all about building those relationships. Very often for a parent to find out that there is a difficulty that a child may possibly never overcome and won't be, academically specifically brilliant, or be really good at forming relationships, or those areas, it can be difficult because as parents, we of course have these dreams and these hopes for our children, which we very often sort of formulate separate from who our children actually are. They are more sort of our ideals, very much also influenced by our upbringing and our cultural experience. And, it is difficult when a child doesn't necessarily fit into that ideal. It is something that one has to work through. And, understanding that as an educator, and also understanding that initially there might be resistance from parents to accept that support and to accept this sort of the situation as it is really important. But I've never had a situation where I haven't, by the end of it, formed really strong connections with parents, and we've worked for the benefit of the child. And, at the end of it, everybody is happier.
Yeah, I think one of the beautiful things about this conversation, Ali, talking about all of these fundamentals, the really important basics, trust, building relationships, communication, sits at the heart of anything and everything that we do. So whether it's talking about special educational needs, or whether we're talking about music or art or science, or whichever area of the school, these are the fundamentals that apply everywhere.
Yeah.
It's about coming back to that idea of community, building that sense of belonging, whereby we feel that we are cared for, that we're nurtured, that the environment is safe, and we can be who we are without fear of condemnation or judgment, etc. And it's so easy to say all of these things, but we know in practice that this is the beauty of being in a school, and the challenge of being in a school is getting it all right.
Yeah.
And this is what we're about to do. So here we go.
Very exciting to be thinking that in a couple of weeks the children are going to be coming through that door, and it's going to be, filled with hopefully laughter and excitement, and for all the children a place where they want to be and where they're happy to be, and they form those relationships that will, guide them and make them stronger, and make sure that they, find their place in the world and where they belong, hopefully sooner than it happened for some of us, in terms of finding a safe space and knowing that, they can always find that support and encouragement and belief in them from those, adults specifically who are around them.
Yeah, beautifully put. And so that brings us to the end of our dialogue, our conversation today, Ali. And of course, just one of many, many conversations that we will have over the coming years as we build that supportive environment for the Lisboan and our children. So we have the opportunity now. I know that our colleague John, who's been in the background, collating questions, and if you have a question, you can hit the chat icon. I think it's at the top of your screen, and you can type in a question.
Very nice. Yes, any Q&A questions can be submitted. I should be able to get to them, but we have one right now. It's just a parent who is generally concerned that they're worried their child might get singled out. And what kind of procedures and processes do we have to protect against kind of a child feeling like they're being pulled out of class, things like that?
Yeah, so unfortunately, these things happen in schools, and they will happen in our school at times. And it's vitally important when it does happen that we all together as a staff body, as a staff community, deal with these incidents as they arise immediately. And we do so in a way that is supportive, because of course we have to educate about what is appropriate behavior and what is inappropriate behavior. Where are those boundaries? And what does it mean when we cross those boundaries and make other people feel bad? We have negative impacts on them. So our approach to behavior at the Lisboan is very much around the concept of restorative justice, restorative conversations, making sure that when we damage relationships, that we have the opportunity to understand how we've damaged them, and then also how we can repair them and mend them and build bridges between people. So that's vitally important. Of course, we take very seriously if there are any serious incidents that occur at the school in terms of young people taking making the decisions which can have very serious consequences, then of course there have to be spaces within our school where we can take children and take them out of the environment, particularly if anybody is in potential harm's way, which God forbid would ever happen in our school. But incidents such as these have to be dealt with quickly. And as Ali was talking about earlier, communication is really important, making sure that parents are informed and that they form a central part of that restorative process. That's vitally important. Ali?
Yeah, I also think that, making sure that children have the confidence to speak out and not to feel that they need to be quiet about situations like that. And, that's very often all a child needs is one specific teacher that they connect with. But it's definitely something that needs to be encouraged within the classrooms, within, the school culture, that it's okay to speak out, that it's, that it is open communication, and that, children will be listened to. And also, if things are seen by teachers in the, within the school, and that those sort of things are immediately addressed. It's not something that's sort of ignored or put down to, oh, well, it's just children behaving like children. Children behave like children for as long as they aren't taught how to do things in an appropriate way. And, yes, everybody makes mistakes and children do behave mean to each other at times, but these are also should be taken as opportunities of teaching and learning. And I think, that's something that one has to be consciously aware of continuously within a school environment, to actually be aware of what is going on around you, to see, and to encourage good relationships and to have that open dialogue and create an environment where there is that possibility for a child to feel confident to say, look, this happened, it didn't make me feel comfortable. How are we going to deal with it from now onwards? What are we going to do? How are we going to address it? Those sort of things.
And building that into our educational programs.
Yeah.
In terms of, learning about how we build social bonds and connections and how we communicate, what is appropriate communication and behavior and what is not. And then when things do go amiss, yes, as you say, Ali, that this is an important learning opportunity, vitally important.
Very nice. As a follow-up to this, it seems that all teachers should be somehow trained in SEN. What does it look like as a school supporting SEN in total?
Yes, I mean that we are all the responsibility of all of our teachers is to be able to identify and support challenges. So Ali, of course, you're going to be a vitally important part in this and sharing your knowledge, learning, and expertise with us. And of course, we have members of our team as well who have considerable experience in supporting children with various different challenges. And so they are also an important source of learning for our team too. This is a collective team effort always. So whether it's about special educational needs or whether it's about, for example, language, we recognize the fact that we are having numbers of young people joining us who are learning, whether it be English or Portuguese or other languages. And so we are also all language teachers as well, in the same kind of way that we are all special educational needs teachers too.
Yeah, I think also, at the end of the day, anything that is good for a neurodiverse child in terms of, strategies, is good for everybody. It's not that it's only specific to working with certain children. It works with everybody, and it strengthens everybody's ability to learn and progress and move forward and to build on their strengths and their interests. It's not that these sort of, when you're working with a child who's, got a neurodiversity, that specifically that strategy can only be used with that child. These strategies work and they work well and they are, they strengthen the whole class and all the children within the class, not just the child who needs this so-called specific intervention.
Yeah, excellent point.
Will you be circulating through classrooms, or will you work with children outside of the classroom?
I think it depends very much on the type of intervention that is needed. So there's different ways to supporting children. You can do group intervention, depending on what the type of intervention is as well. Then there's specific one-to-one intervention, and then there's intervention within the classroom. So it depends very much on the need of the child. Sometimes it's all three of those types of interventions. Sometimes it's just one. It depends very much on the need of the child, and it's very much sort of catered to the child, the individual. It's not a one fits all type of approach. But I definitely, in the past, I've worked in schools which were very, very big, and it was very difficult to do in-class intervention. And that is something that I would like to focus on quite a bit, because that also gives you the opportunity to work with the other children in the classroom as well as the teachers, and to find out the way teachers interact and their teaching techniques. And I think it's a good way to sort of strengthen that support system by being in a classroom and seeing how a child behaves in a classroom as well. It's sometimes very different to when you're working one-to-one. But also, if you're working with a child specifically who has dyslexia, there are certain exercises that one would do, 20 minutes a day or 10 minutes a day, one-to-one. So again, it very much depends on the need of the child, and also at what stage of, sort of the development that a child is at.
All right, very nice. And this is the last question for now. It seems that we're done, unless last one comes in. But will we be able to meet with you before school opens? Is the question.
Yes.
Well, my door is always open. Once we're in the school building, I think anybody is welcome, and I'd be very happy to meet with the parents as well as with the children before school. That's definitely something that is nice to do before school starts, because you can also already start forming those relationships, and also, for the child to know, okay, this is the adult that I can definitely go to if I need something, and for them to know where to find me and who I am, and who to ask for if they are in a situation where they need that extra support quite quickly.
Yeah, we have basically our staff will come together on Monday, the 18th of August, and then for the next 2 weeks, basically before the 1st of September, we're having an orientation program where we basically all work together in making sure that the school is ready for opening our doors on the 1st of September. But we also have a community welcome event on the 29th. That's the Friday, the 29th of August, where basically you can come and meet your teachers. And of course, Ali and I will be there. And then Ali and I, we will have a conversation about, so of course what we want to do is invite parents to come in, and, where we run workshops, for example, presentations on a variety of different topics and issues. And of course, one of them being special educational needs, for example. So we look forward to welcoming parents into and engaging with parents in not only, as I say, through these sort of workshop opportunities where we are giving people the opportunity to learn and to engage in conversation with us.
Right. Yep. There's been no more questions, so I think we can finalize this chat.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for attending today's Lisboan Live, and we hope to see you and your children in the school. And Ali, thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure, as always, to speak to you.
Same here. Have a lovely afternoon still.
Yes, thank you, and to all.
We'll speak
Bye-bye.
soon.
Yes,
Bye-bye.